Good morning, everyone. I hope you have a good morning. I'd like to first start off this episode just a moment of silence for the world and Ukrainians. Let me not make that clear. The world and Ukrainians. I think that the world is going to be in a sore spot because of this. So, yeah. All right. So let's kick off by talking a little bit about Google. Now, GCP, I think, has made some moves that are going to hurt it. Now, let's be clear. I needed a title. I needed a thumbnail. I don't think that this is the death of GCP, but it is following some other things that died making the same decisions, same choices, same things. So let's talk about it. GCP, two major things. The very first is something that I had trouble actually tracking down. There's a bunch of rumors about it, and there's Business Insider, which is a pay-for site, has an article on it, but it has this: Google Cloud lays off US-based support engineers. Now, Google classically doesn't lay off engineers, they give them 60 days. And there was some confirmation on this Reddit thing about people that got 60 days. So I do know something is happening. Yeah, they would have 60 days to find a new role within the company. Now, and this is from Business Insider with the paywall. Now, the thing is, I couldn't find a whole lot from Google confirming this right here, which was the weird thing. I would kind of expect them to say more. But there were some people from Google that said that they had been given 60 days. So I think that it's valid. This is kind of out of the playbook of Rackspace. We were just talking about how Rackspace 6 months to a year ago laid off their US based customer support and it had gone into the dumps. Not saying that you couldn't do offsite support well, it just generally isn't. When you're doing offsite support, generally you're doing it because you don't care as much anymore. And that's, generally speaking, a way to cut corners and try to save money, and just generally doesn't end well. Not that I've seen. Now, again, I can't find too much from Google itself, but there seems to be decent amount of evidence if you dig around. If you dig around, and Business Insider does have some sort of reporting, but again, that's behind a paywall. So, yeah. The other thing that I think is going to really hurt it is Google has been one of the ones out there that just can't seem to let go of their office. I think they paid a whole lot for their office buildings, and they really want to get that money back or feel like it's useful. They're requiring people to come back. There is no more work from home, period. And that will, again, they give another April 4th. This is classic Google. They haven't waited and then been like, over the next 3 months we want people to start coming back. As you know, no. They give a hard deadline, April 4th. We're not going to wait for things. This is like the fourth time that they've done this. And I think that it's going to wear on employees. And I think that they're going to lose good talent because of this. And yeah, so anyways, we'll see. We'll see. But these are the two things that I see hurting Google in the near future. Plus, they're no longer the see no evil, do no evil company. They're like, I don't see any evil. It's okay. It's okay. So, anyways, they're getting less engineers that are excited about working for them. All right. So that was pretty much my thoughts on GCP. I don't know if anybody else has any experience with companies laying off their support staff and outsourcing it. Generally, that's a bad thing to me. I haven't seen that go well. I'd love to hear if somebody else has seen that go well. I'm not saying that it can't. I just haven't seen it go well. I haven't seen that give a uh, better customer support. So hopefully this is somewhat wrong, and maybe they're just reorganizing a little bit. So that's the other thing is like it could be more that they're just reorganizing and it's not laying off all near shore um, support engineers. But this is also really weird because with its demand for people to work from the office, they're offshoring to the other side of the world their support, which doesn't make any sense to me because if you can do this across the world, which same time zone is so much easier than a completely different time zone, it sends mixed signals. Yeah, yeah, because yeah, they're ending remote work, and but then saying that all support is going remote. Anyways, yes, Google support is about to be a dumpster fire if it wasn't already. I've never really had bad experience with Google support. So yeah, I can't say that I've really had a bad experience with Google support. I don't know that it's necessarily known for being great, but it can always get worse. It can always get worse. All right, so let's move on to cybersecurity and the Ukrainian conflict because I think I think we're in an unprecedented time where Russia is pushing forward the cybersecurity game. And the reason I say that is not that Russia is the greatest cyber threat out there. That's probably more like China, but they're escalating the timeline. Everybody's been behind on security, and I think that's a pretty known fact. But I think that this conflict is going to now escalate that cybersecurity need. And we're going to look at some of the ways like it's already evident that that is not only a need, but something we're going to have to take much more seriously going forward. All right. So the very first thing that we're going to look at is this, which was released by the FBI and CISA. For those of you not in the U.S., the CISA is kind of a cybersecurity firm. It's kind of like the NSA, except it's a little bit different. Kind of hard to explain, but just a it's a security for our infrastructure. So NSA is more like spy hacking, and the CISA is more for like internal cybersecurity and compliance for our government. Anyways, that would be it's kind of like the difference between the FBI and the CIA. If you know those, I would say that's probably about the same for the CISA versus the NSA. All right, so um, this is basically the a lot of warnings that a lot of the malware that's being released on Ukraine right now isn't that's not how malware works. Most of the time malware is written in such a way that while you launch it and attack a certain person with it, a lot of the times whether they're worms or viruses or whatnot, you design them to spread. You design them to infect more hosts. You design them to continue on. You can specifically target certain infrastructure, certain machines, and whatnot, but generally that's not how this malware is designed. And so the general warning from the CISA and the FBI is be on the lookout for Ukrainian malware, not from Ukraine. It's Russian malware that was targeting Ukraine to be hitting your systems because if they infected somebody, The idea is that there's going to be a cascading effect across the world of this malware. So that's something to be on the lookout for, as yeah, that's out there. That being said, Microsoft has actually been, and I covered this a little bit last week, Microsoft has been on the bleeding edge of detecting some of this malware. It first reportedly stopped a new a new wiper malware from Ukrainian systems in 3 hours. Now, a new one has popped up, this Isaac wiper, but they also detected that one as well. So I didn't realize, Microsoft and Azure have been escalating their cybersecurity. They really have been. And, if you've been following over the last several months, they've stopped some very large DDoS attacks. And this was actually really interesting to watch, as they have now stopped several new malware threats that they weren't even looking for. It wasn't even on their infrastructure. And it's interesting stories as to how they came up. So I'm going to actually link not these two stories here, because these are more news headlines, but there's actually a Microsoft one on how they actually discovered the very first wiper post. I think this is it. Yeah. So this, I will leave this one to you. I will link this one in the description, because it was actually a really good, not deep dive, but overview of how some of it worked and how it's transforming the digital warfare. Because a lot of it's also used for propaganda. Russia, and I imagine Ukraine is doing the exact same thing in inverse. Although Ukraine doesn't have a whole lot of state-backed hackers prior to a few weeks ago, because I think they have a relatively large one based around the world at this point. So yeah, I'll link this in the description. I'm gonna keep the links to a minimum. There are a lot of articles, and we're gonna be talking about them. I'm gonna keep the links to the most important ones for you guys to check out, because there's a lot of stuff here. While this was happening, we found a new Chinese hacking tool. So there is no surprise there, other than maybe China doesn't hate Russia as much as we thought they did, or the enemy of my enemy is my friend. I don't know how that never crossed anybody's mind. I warned of this for a long time, and you know what? I'm sorry we have taken such a stance. I know that a lot of people think Americans are war hungry and whatnot. In general, Americans are adverse to war, very adverse. We didn't join a lot of wars until after lots of people got massacred. And that's what's happening again. We will wait until half the world gets massacred by Russia and China before we actually step in. And I guess that's what you guys want, because you guys always complain that we're too war hungry. So that's a shame, and it sucks, and there's not much I can do about it. But moving on from that, I don't know how I got on that tangent, but yes. Let's binding operational okay, so this is again from the Department of Homeland Security. Not my favorite one, but they list 95 things that you need to patch immediately that's been basically seen in exploited vulnerabilities in Russian attacks. So definitely check out this list and make sure that you mitigate them. A lot of them are with like a Windows DNS server. It's always DNS. You can remember that. It's always DNS. So, yeah. This is where I'd like to talk a little bit. I think there's an unprecedented amount of domino effect from sanctions. The sanctions, in my point of view, again, I'm not a political news person, but the sanctions aren't very good in my point of view. mainly because everybody said that the sanctions weren't going to stop Putin. And if they're not going to stop Putin, mostly the sanctions just hurt the people of Russia. If you don't believe me, check out the ruble. I think it's like 140 to 1 USD, which it usually is around like 60 to 80. So sanctions were designed to hurt the people, not Putin. Putin hasn't suffered, and Putin's war machine hasn't suffered. So think about that, because we're also going to talk about how some people have said, hey, no, I'm not going to do this because it would only hurt the people. Well, that's what the sanctions were designed to do. Whether you like it or not, that's not what I'm arguing. That's what the sanctions were designed to do, was to hurt the people. Now, they tried to target it so that it hurt the oligarchs more than it hurt other people. But when you think about the super rich, hurting them more doesn't really hurt them that much. What? They're still going to eat. The rest of the Russians are the ones scrambling to provide food and whatnot. So that's who the sanctions are going to hurt the most, no matter what. You hurt the oligarchs, weird name, but you're going to hurt those people. And that's the sad, sad truth. That being said, you think the Ukrainians are hurting a little bit more? Just a little bit more? Maybe that's a little bit of a selfish stance to take. Internet backbone provider shuts off service in Russia. Now, this isn't going to stop internet in Russia, to be clear. I know that there was some confusion with that, and no, it might make them slower. So the reason they had to shut it off is because basically there's a sanction on Russia state media, and one of their the people that are served by this backbone are Yandex, their mobile carriers, and telecoms, and media companies. And so basically, the easiest thing was to do was just to turn it off. Again, isn't going to cut Russia off of internet, but it will slow their internet down. They have several backbones that they can tie into. So far, this is just the first. I was trying to look it up. I found at least 6 other backbone providers. So they still have plenty, but they're going to start bottlenecking. And how long those other ones stay up is definitely interested. Hey, Gregory. I hope that you're doing okay. And you know what? One thing I want to be clear, and this is something we did horribly during World War II, so we should learn from it, is I hope that you're all treating Russians okay. I have my qualms with Putin, and I will call those out, and I think what he's doing is horrible. But, in World War II, the United States treated Japanese horribly because of what their government did. And what I would say is make sure that you're treating the Russians around you with respect that they deserve as a human being. Obviously not if they're invading your country. Don't treat those ones with respect. But you know what? Most of those probably don't even want to be there, as far as the reports are claiming anyways. So, my sympathies to them. They don't have much of a choice. So yes, welcome, Gregory. I hope that people are treating you fine. You seem to be a decent human being. I've gotten to do stuff with you, and so I hope people are treating you fine. I haven't heard any reports of that happening, but humans are turds, so I can't imagine it not happening. This was interesting. So activists are using ads to sneak real news into Russia about Ukraine. Holy crap. That is amazing. So Russia is not quite like China. It doesn't have the firmest grip on their networks like China does. China has the Great Wall, the Great Firewall of China. Russia doesn't quite have that. It has a little bit more leaky wall. I would say it's more like a sieve, the Great Sieve of Russia. This was really interesting. These people are basically hackers. This is how hackers think, and why I'm not a real hacker is because they take real things and they find different ways of using them. And so they're using they're using ads and ad networks to get real news into Russian about Ukraine. So that's definitely interesting to see. This was actually supposed to be with the earlier stuff. I thought I actually did a pretty good job. Again, this is just about how um, when I was talking about Microsoft and how they had caught the Wipergate and some of the other stuff, and how while this stuff is targeting Ukraine, the effect is that it could spread worldwide. So you need to be on the lookout, and you need to make sure. I guess that's what this entire episode is basically going to be about until we get to the end. We have some fun stuff over the end just to wipe away our mind from the worries of this. You need to be making sure that you have your stuff up to date and patched. So this also brings civilian infrastructure into call. Viasat is a satellite internet company, kind of like Starlink, except not as bombacious of a CEO would be what I would say. Viasat has had problems staying active from Russian hackers. Well, uh, I I don't know. They're not saying, but it's interesting that they went down the same day the Russian invasion started, and have had troubles the entire time that Russia's been invading. So if it's not Russian-based hackers, it's collusion with Russians, which would be worse. But I would assume that it's Russian-based hackers. Now that being said, Starlink did go ahead and deploy for Ukraine. So at least they do have some internet there, and that seems to have been staying active. I was going to find the news article on that because that was supposed to be right there with that. Because right now, actually, internet access is a priority or a concern because Russia is indiscriminately bombing infrastructure that is making it hard to keep it going. I don't think I have the Starlink one, but you can find the Starlink the Starlink information. Oh, actually, here we can see that on Saturday, SpaceX announced company service is active in Ukraine, and they're shipping more terminals that are en route. So hopefully, those are making it there, and they're staying not destroyed. I know that Elon Musk was tweeting out, as he commonly does, how to keep them safe. He wants you to put like netting over them because they'll be targets, and not to have human operators near them because again they'll be targets. So keep your infrastructure safe, and one of those is physical security, and that's hard in a war zone. I would actually check out the tweets because while they're very short, they're straight and to the point. Yeah. All right. So the Ukraine government on Monday asked for the ICANN servers to cut off Russia. And basically, ICANN said no. And there's two reasons. One, I don't think is a good reason. The other, I think, is a fantastic reason. And the first reason is that Russians themselves need to know what is going on because we need Russians themselves to tell Putin to stop. And so it's important that they don't get cut off from the internet. So for that one, I think that's a fantastic one. The other one is because it will hurt Russians and Russian citizens who are innocent. I agree. It will. I think, again, this one is so up in the air. The Russian economy and citizens are powering the war machine. And that's what the sanctions are doing. And as much as that sucks and as much as that is horrible, what else are we going to do? Nobody wants us to get into war because if the U.S. gets into war, it becomes a nuclear war, and nobody wins there. So I don't know what the right answer is. But yeah, that sucks. And for the first one, Russians need to know. I think it's appropriate to keep it on. I think that they do need to know, and they need to have that outlet. So I think that that's a fair response there. Conti sided with Putin, which, yeah, and when they sided with Putin, all of a sudden they got hacked and they got all their data leaked. So that was probably not a great choice. Yeah. That being said, Anonymous has launched war on Russia. So they said they were going to war with Russia. Anonymous has done a couple fun things. The first thing is that they offered Bitcoin to any Russian soldiers who surrendered tanks. I haven't heard if that's actually worked yet. I haven't seen any tanks being surrendered, but yeah, they were offering, I think, 1 Bitcoin for each tank or something like that. It was quite a bit. And yeah, so basically, the hacking group Anonymous has gone to war with Russia. So if you back Putin, you're going to war with Anonymous, and they have done quite a few things. So probably wouldn't want to go up against Anonymous myself. But I also suck at hacking, so probably yeah. Ukraine has been making a lot of requests from a lot of things. Another one that they went was Coinbase and other digital currency people to block Russia. And basically, people said no, they wouldn't. For the Coinbase one, mainly because it would hurt the people of Russia who are already struggling. I think that's probably fair. Again, I would say that that's what sanctions were designed for. And we'll see if the sanctions eventually cause these people to also shut down their Russian operations. I'm not sure. Now, the sanctions would stop oligarchs, whatever, the horrible, corrupt people of Russia, or should at least. But they did do a blanket statement for just blocking all Russians. Now, this being said, there has been a slew of companies pulling out, from Adobe to Microsoft. This is just the one, but there's a ton of companies pulling out. Apple won't sell new products. Microsoft now won't sell new products. Part of this is because of the sanctions and the tightrope that it forces companies to walk. Sometimes it's easier just to pull out than it is to deal with the sanctions. So I would imagine that you start to see cloud providers. I haven't actually seen cloud providers pull out because yeah, but you could see that they stop servicing Russian IPs and things like that. We'll see. I haven't seen any of that yet, but they're stopping selling it. I know Adobe has. I know Apple has. I think most people have at this point. And you know what? This is going to hurt the Russian peoples. Do you think that this is going to hurt Putin? Nope. Not one sanction really hurt Putin. And that is the sad truth of the matter. All right, so this is what I was talking about. Ukraine has recruited an IT army. And after they did so, a lot of Russian sites have gone dark. So hopefully what they're doing is working. If you're interested in what they're doing, there is a Twitter you can follow and jump on. There are a bunch of lists of businesses that support the Putin war machine. And I'm trying to be specific and call it the Putin war machine because I don't think it's all Russians. I think it's Putin's war machine. So they've listed a group of targets that specifically support the Putin war machine. Yeah, so if that's something that you're interested in, I would check your country's laws. I don't condone hacking illegally. So I would definitely check your country's laws or go to Ukraine because their laws support it. But yes, interesting. This was an interesting conversation that I saw in the open source world. I didn't think about open source's play in the Russian conflict, in Putin's war. But open source communities have pondered removing code optimizations for Russian processors. Now, I think that this is more of a show of faith than anything else. Unless if you scrub Git history and remove that code from ever existing, it's easy enough for Russian processors to actually get that optimization code. You're not really doing anything major. All you're doing is really showing your distaste for what Putin is doing. It's really easy to revert Git commits. Just saying. But what else could open source be doing? What else could open source be doing to help those in need? I want to challenge everybody to think about that. What could we be doing as IT professionals to help the refugees? I mean, obviously, we can and should be giving money to the countries that are and organizations that are supporting those refugees. But what can we be doing as professionals? Is there something more we can be doing? I challenge everybody this week to come up with an idea. Talk on it on the Discord, and let's talk about it. Let's see if there's not something we can't do as an open source community. I think that this is a cool first step, to say that you're angry, to say that this isn't okay. Again, I don't think that it's very effective, but I would do it. I would do it. Why do I care about Ukraine? I care about everyone. Why do I do this YouTube channel? I don't make money off of it. I do. I make like $25, which can buy me 2 meals. I care about everyone, and especially the little guy. Yeah. I care about the Russian citizens that are getting hurt by this, because they are. Putin is not only hurting Ukrainians, he's hurting his own citizens, and that's not great, and that sucks. So yeah, I care a lot about people in general. So yeah, I don't know if I need to say more on that. If that if that is enough for you. I care that people don't get attacked. I care that that women and children aren't killed mercilessly, aren't flung into a war zone without strong ceasefires and humanitarian pathways. Yeah, I absolutely do care. I don't care who you are or where you're from. I don't care what religion you're from. I absolutely care. I put my educational content out here because I care and I want to help people. And I don't care what your background is, what religion you are, what country you're from. As long as you can understand English or the subtitles work for you, I hope to help you where you are. That's my goal. I don't know what your goals are. I do care about the Somalians that were bombed. Why do you think I don't care? Now, if you want to just stereotype me with all Americans, which I also think Americans also do care about that, but if you want to stereotype me just because of stuff my country has done, you can stereotype me. That would be fine, and that's on you. And I'm probably not going to go down this anymore. But I do care, and I do care about everybody. So, yeah, but you're more than welcome to drop in my Discord and ask me more if you have serious, legitimate questions. If you're just asking to stereotype me based off of your views of Americans or whatnot, then that's great. And unfortunately, conflicts are messy. But yeah, why do I care? Because I care about everybody. And unfortunately, they're turds in this world and my country. But it's a little rude just to stereotype me from your perception of Americans. So I'll just let you know that. All right. So let's talk about not Ukrainian conflict stuff, just the normal cybersecurity stuff that we all like to get a good little chuckle out of. Yeah, you know what? I don't actually know the bomb in Somalia, so like I care about Somalians. So you know what? Let me be clear. I don't know what bomb in Somalia you're talking about right now. There's you could be talking about something that happened 10 years ago. You could be talking about something that happened today. I don't know what you're talking about right now. And you know what? Again, I'd love more information on it. But just to say that I don't care about those people would be wrong. Let me re-clear about that. But I don't want to digress on this. I care about Ukrainians because I care about everybody, and uh, I'd like to see everybody prosper. That's why I do this YouTube channel in the first place. I'd like to help people, no matter who they are or where they came from, what their background is. I'd like to see them grow as a software engineer, maybe as a person. Well, who knows? Absolutely. Just because I didn't say, you know what? One person I got to meet from this channel because I helped him out, it is from Africa, and I could mention his country, but I don't want to expose his countries directly. And you know what? I would consider myself friends with him. And guess what? We're from different religions and different religional backgrounds. And you know what? I still care very deeply about him. But just because I don't talk about any other country right now doesn't mean that I don't care about them. That's an excellent point, and I appreciate it. Now I'm going to move on because this isn't my normal and whatnot. But yes, absolutely. Just because I haven't mentioned your country, if you're going through hardship right now, I do care, and I'm sorry. And you know what? If there's something I can do to help, and you've been directly affected, please let me know. I would like to help. If there is something like that, and the hackerverse could know more about it, please reach out. I'd love to be an activist for you. But I can't mention every country where uh, crimes are being committed because unfortunately that's every country. I can look at the United States and tell you where somebody is being unjustly punished. I can look at Canada and tell you where a whole lot of people are being unjustly punished. Unfortunately, I can't name them all. Um, Bombing in February 2022. Okay, I'm gonna look it up. I will. I'm interested. I don't know that much about it. I don't know who perpetrated it. I don't know that much about it. So I'll look it up. And yeah, again, join the Discord and ask me there. I'd happy to talk what I find about it. All right, let's get on to this. All right, so there was a data leak from Adafruit, and they warned that anybody on or before 2019 could have been leaked. So the weird thing is they they took it down, but they're not letting you know if you've been compromised. So um I don't know. I like Adafruit. I love what they're doing. So if you don't know who Adafruit is they're a little bit more expensive to buy from than necessarily Amazon. And that's partially because they open source all of their hardware schematics and stuff. So they do a lot of open source stuff, and they generally open source it. Then Chinese companies just replicate it and pump it out for really cheap. So I like supporting them, and I generally buy a lot of my stuff through them. But yeah, I probably have some of my data compromised. I couldn't find what data though, or if I was on the list, so I don't know. We'll see. Along those lines, a much larger data breach was Nvidia. Nvidia got hit with um, uh, a large breach, and so they stole sensitive data. Some of it was released after their first request wasn't met, and now their next request is that NVIDIA open source the GeForce drivers. So we'll see if that happens. I don't think it will, but they said that they were going to set until March 4th. I couldn't find them releasing anything on March 4th, so I don't know if they just didn't have anything and they were just bluffing. I don't know. But I couldn't find their next release of data. I looked. I only spent like 10 minutes because I don't have all the time in the world to look for it. But yeah, they I'll continue looking for it. If I find it, I'll let you guys know. But they definitely got hurt by it. That being said, it seems that the same hacking group, Lapus, I think I don't know. It's yeah, I don't know. It's probably French, and I'm probably mispronouncing it. But anyways, they hit NVIDIA, also hit Samsung. They only took about 200 gigabytes of compressed data. It depends on what data they took, if that 200 gigabytes is meaningful. Just 200 gigabytes, it sounds like a lot. And if you're talking about like employee personal information or code, 200 gigabytes is a ton. But if you're talking about like, oh, I don't know, all their marketing material, they probably have terabytes of designs and animations and videos and whatnot. So it really depends on what that is. They say that there's confidential documentation, code, and other proprietary information. But again, I don't know. This is just what they're claiming. Samsung didn't release what was actually stolen or if anything was stolen. So this is still developing. We'll see if it has any further fallout. All right. This is an interesting one, and in a war, this is actually something that I have harped on for a while. It's infrastructure security, and these two CSVs are big on that. So effectively, what handles the U.S. power grid has two vulnerabilities, and they need updated immediately. So the firmware on voltage protection relays, our industrial voltage protection relays have a vulnerability that basically opens it up to DDoS attacks and, at worst case, complete control. So pretty much everything. I think that this gets a 10 out of 10 as far as vulnerabilities go. Gregory, I hope that you're staying safe, and I know that you had to leave. Like I said, I hope that you're not suffering any undue hate because of your origin. And yeah, please stay safe. So I know that again, like I commented on the U.S., we did a really bad job during World War II for hating Japanese and stereotyping all of them. Like us humans so often do. And so I hope that you don't come under that. And I hope that people still treat you with the dignity that you should be treated with as a human. So if you missed that and my statement on that, please, I do want to extend that to you. You've been a great supporter on this channel. And yeah, so anyways, just wanted to make sure that you knew that. And I hope people are treating you well. And like I said, all right, so yeah, Chinese companies are going to step in and take the place of the people that step out. Absolutely. China doesn't care that Russia's invading. If they did, Russia would have stopped. All right, let's talk about Kubernetes. I usually have a section on Kubernetes. We're talking about Kubernetes right now, and that's Knative becomes a CNCF project. If You don't know what Knative is. It's the most confounding project I've ever seen. It allows you to go serverless while managing a Kubernetes cluster. So, and the servers. Yeah, you heard me right. I don't understand Knative because I think the idea is that you have a group that understands servers and they provide Knative to the rest of the company so that the rest of the company can pretend that they don't have servers. I think that's the idea. I'm just a little fuzzy on the idea. So, if you disagree with me, please let me know because I actually do struggle with what the point of Knative is if it's not that. If it's not that you have such a large company, you can have a team that supports Knative on top of Kubernetes, on top of your hardware, which your hardware could be in the cloud. I don't care. So that the rest of your company can have serverless. Serverless. All right. I don't think Chinese technology is underlooked in the US. We don't trust Chinese technology. I think that's more of the statement that I would go with. These were interesting. So this week we had several CVEs, and I didn't put this in the other security because this is the Kubernetes. I want to keep the Kubernetes world clean, unadulterated with the woes of the world. This is just Kubernetes. It's kind of my safe spot. I enjoy it. It actually had several bad CVEs itself. So again, I'm going to reiterate. If you think containers provide the same level of security as virtual machines, you would be very wrong. We prove this about twice a year, but I keep proving it. All right, so this first one is given a 7 out of 10, and the reason it's a 7 out of 10 and not a 10 out of 10 is because if you use SE Linux, you're fine. SE Linux will stop this problem. If you don't use SE Linux, you're screwed. So, goes back to layers of security. I need to make a shirt. Layers of security. You must have layers of security because when something like this happens, you need that other layer for protection. And I know SE Linux is painful. It's very painful. Maybe I should make some episodes on it. But you're going to have to do those things to stay secure. So remember those layers of security because those types of things, this is actually why you see here, let's see, Red Hat says, they state somewhere that it's not a problem on their machines because of SE Linux. The real problem is this statement right here. Oh yeah, Red Hat virtualization requires SE Linux, so you're fine. There's no mitigation right now. It's either not available or current available options don't meet the security criteria, which means that it's either doesn't really fix the problem or there's a couple of reasons why. But yeah, this is a big deal because if there is no mitigation and you're not using SE Linux, you're in some bad water. Bad water. That's skating on thin ice, as my father would say. On top of that, if that wasn't bad enough, so this was escaping the namespaces. And if you remember right, namespaces put up the boundaries, put up the walls. This was escaping the namespaces. There was another problem in C groups. Now, this is in C groups V1, so if you've migrated to V2, which you should when you can, then you're fine. But this is in the C groups and allows you to bypass namespaces via C groups. So that's not great, but there is a mitigation. Migrate to V2. Okay. Then to top all of this off, in Kubernetes, this was just not a great week. Containerd CRI plugin had an insecure handling of image volumes that allowed a man-in-the-middle attack. Not great, and not great. So, you definitely should be looking at this. This has been patched, though, so definitely, just again, patching takes care of this problem. But yeah, a lot of people run on containerd. It's the base for. I think it's the base for all made. I don't know about AKS, so don't quote me on AKS, but I know GCP by default uses containerd. I know that AWS, EKS, and Bottle Rocket both use containerd by default. So don't think that you're not affected, but they do provide patching, so definitely patch. All right. Yep. This is another article, but this is an article on the previous CVE, so I don't think we need to cover that anymore. That's all I have for Kubernetes. Those were the big things that happened in Kubernetes. Let's move to some happy news. We need some happy news in these days. So that is Raspberry Pi turned 10. I don't know about you, but I love the Raspberry Pi almost as much as I like Arduino. You can ask me why I like Arduino better than Raspberry Pi. That's for reasons, but Raspberry Pi is fantastic, and they turned 10. And this is a cool little blog on their history and story and what they've done. So you should check it out. And this is probably going to screw up Apple's patents right here, the Pi 400. Already been done. This I found funny. This I found funny. Full disclosure. I'm like a manager by night, programmer by day. I work at a startup, so while I am a manager, I still am very much in the technical realm. And I'm mostly good at technical. If you have a manager that has nothing better to do, but watch when your icon goes orange, you need a new job. And if you don't think that a manager knows whether you're getting crap done, whether your icon it goes orange or not, then you're also deluding yourself. I work with a great team who works hard and gets a lot of stuff done, but I also know what they're getting done. And so if you're trying to just not get any work done but look online, that's probably, in my point of view, much worse than looking offline. Actually, I don't care when my employees work, so if they want to work in the middle of the night, as long as they come to stand up, I don't really care. They can work whenever they are most productive and feel like working. And that is my policy, as long as you come to the important meetings, which we try to have as few important meetings as possible, but yes. But yes, if this is you and you're getting a mouse jiggler to look like you're working, first, this mouse jiggler is $40. $40. Second, my friend wrote a bash script in 3 lines that moves the mouse for you. That's free. I don't understand why you would pay $40 when you could get free. I don't understand. This is insane. This is insane. Write a bash script. Write a bash script. Silkworm encryption, staying safe online, has come to the Silkworm. Now, if you're like, oh, is this a new type of like algorithm? Yes, it is. It's the Silkworm algorithm. I'm actually talking about the Silkworm. I'm not, a lot of times we'll be like, this is the Jupyter algorithm, and it's not talking about a rock from Jupiter. This is actually talking about silkworms. So, one of the problems with random numbers is, as many of you know, they're not random. And they have a lot of problems. And when your security and encryption are based on randomness and needing that randomness, well, you're pretty screwed if it's not actually random. Well, that's where silkworms come in. What a group of researchers found is that basically silk isn't perfect, and it has all of this unevenness in its fibers. And if you shine light through it, it gives you a different pattern every single time. Every single piece of material made from a silkworm strand has a different pattern. And they make random numbers from that pattern. Now, I haven't seen, they didn't talk about making this into a chip, which they would kind of need to chipify it if we were going to use it. But that's basically what they're doing. They're a unique pattern of light that is unique based off of silkworms' spewing silk out of their butts. That's it. I think it's cool. I still need to see the chipification of it. It needs to be in a chip. We can't have silkworms in our computer. Say we can't. We probably shouldn't have silkworms in our computers. It's probably not good for them. So they need to chipify it, but it's cool, and I love the thinking out of the box. This is the coolest type of let's think out of the box. So definitely read this article if you have the time. Just put the mouse on a clock with a second hand. This was the dumbest thing I saw, and I know that I don't usually do that, but I know that all the other news was kind of grave, and so I wanted some lightheart. So I'm going to be looking for lighthearted news every once in a while. So this was my lighthearted piece of news. I thought that it was really dumb because you can do it in Bash where you move the mouse. You can do it in PowerShell. I saw somebody that wrote a PowerShell script. If this is what you're trying to do, please don't create e-waste. This is made out of like plastic that's never going to dispose. It don't do this. Don't follow TikTok or use any help off of TikTok. Unless if the TikToker is telling you how to get off of TikTok. I actually wouldn't trust that person, though, so don't trust that person either. Oh, you know what? There I go, proving my ignorance in how silkworms do it. They chew it and spit it out their mouth. I don't know that for a fact. I thought that they pooped it, but you know what? I'm an idiot. I don't know what silkworms do. They create silk. I know a little bit about what silkworms do. Yeah. There we go. I need to stay on my narrow path of expertise, and silkworms are not them. I will need Wikipedia citing for that, Rumil. I'm not just going to trust you. Yeah. Although I did read a research article on how Wikipedia was super biased, so you couldn't really trust it. Not sure how biased that reporting was on whether we can trust Wikipedia, though. So, all right. Here's my engineering blog of the week. We're porting our database drivers to async Rust. Pretty cool. One, because Rust is awesome. Number two, this was really cool. I liked it because it gives you... I think a lot of companies actually have this problem. You want all these client libraries, but then they all have different varying amounts of support for different features, and it's a lot of work to keep them all up. And this is really cool because Rust has really great bindings for C++, Python, and whatnot. And so it actually makes it pretty simple to make a core Rust library that just about every project can wrap and use. So you can still provide your C++, Python bindings. You can still provide those client libraries in those languages for people that use them while powering it with a Rust backend. I actually think that this is a really good use of Rust. That being said, I did find a Rust UI. I don't think you should use Rust UI. I don't think that you should use your UI in Rust, but it's cool. You get to define your UI in code, in the greatest language that exists, in my non-biased opinion. So I think it's really cool. Anyways, this was cool. I think it's a cool article just to get the gears thinking about how you can do it. You don't even have to do it with Rust. There's things like Kotlin Native. I know a professional in the field that uses Kotlin Native the same way they're using Rust here, where they use Kotlin Native to provide this base library that then everything else can use. And they're more in application development, and so like that's Android and iOS and whatnot. But yeah, so cool. And yeah, less bugs because there's less code. You don't repeat the code in a bunch of different projects. You have it in one place. All right, and then yeah, of course, there's this Rust UI. So definitely check out Yuri if you're wanting a Mac, Windows, and Linux UI written purely in Rust. I'm not sure that I don't do UI development. Let me be clear. Never trust me if I give you advice on the UI. I believe that CSS is a disease that you can get along with HTML. And my thoughts on JavaScript are that it came after the fall of mankind to plague us. I'm also just bad at those. All right. Along with the funny news, WordPress ditches pee and tinkle jokes. I don't know how pee and tinkle jokes aren't inclusive. My children thought that this was very inclusive because now they actually understand the code. Now, in actuality, their code was horribly confusing when p parts and last p and p's and tinkle meant paragraphs, last part, and text parts. This code would have been horrifyingly hard to read. Horrifyingly hard to read. And they should have changed it because it's code that should be easy to read. And naming is hard, but these are horrifying. That being said, I don't understand how this is more or less inclusive, unless if I guess there's people offended by P jokes. I guess it's not inclusive to that, but I'm offended by people that are offended by P jokes, so now you're less inclusive to me. Also, I think it's PHP based, which is also not inclusive to me. So when I see this .php, I'm pretty sure you're not inclusive to me anyways. Anyways, I found this funny and weird that they use the more inclusive. They should have just wrote better code that's easier to read, in my opinion. I know that a lot is going on in the world, and you know what? My thoughts go out to, I can never pronounce his name, so I'm just going to say Microsoft CEO, not because he's nameless, because he's not. Neither is his son. But Zane, which I can pronounce as died. I do believe that he was suffering from cerebral palsy, and so my thoughts go out to him. I know that the only reason I bring him up, and I know that there's a lot of children dying right now in the world, and so like part of me doesn't want to give these big CEOs that, but at the same time, he does drive the Microsoft tech world. He's driven Microsoft in a direction never precedented, and I thought that it was at least worth mentioning. This I found I need to start a new section called Ridiculous Government Requests. This one happens to be the EU. I know that I have also brought up US ones though. And so don't think that I'm picking on the EU. I do pick on the EU, but don't think that I am, because I also pick on the US. I'm an equal picker. I will pick on everyone that does some really silly things. The EU is trying to push stuff to not use SSH or TLS certificates, which would make the whole web less secure, and it's kind of silly. And even worse, it's in conjunction with another bill that just makes this more terrifying. Brits should hand passports to social media companies. So not only do you want them to do this over an insecure line, so attackers could do a man-in-the-middle attack, you want them to give their passport information to these attackers. This is terrifying and should go to the laughably, are we in 2022? Oh, man. This hurts my soul. I don't even know what to say about this. A little while ago, one of the Florida's, just to prove that I'm not biased, there was an episode a little while ago where I went after a Florida congressperson who wanted to sue somebody for hacking because they looked at the HTML of the website. What is that? F12? Yeah. Regulators seem to not understand this world very well. Yeah, we'll go on with that. But yes, he did try to sue somebody for hitting F12 and looking at the HTML of the website that they were on. All right, in open source news, I saw this. Orkes. is a new cloud-hosted, fully managed version of Netflix Conductor. If you don't know what Netflix Conductor is, it's part of Netflix's open source, which Netflix actually has more open source than people give them credit for. And there's a company around it to host it in the cloud for you. I asked to join the to test it out. I'll let you know how it is. If it sucks, if it doesn't suck, I'd love to try it. That being said, if somebody's looking for open source, first, Conductor itself is open source, and you're more than welcome to run it. But also Argo Workflows, not Argo CD, which Argo CD is kind of based on Argo Workflows, but Argo Workflows is also a open source workflow runner that works off of a directed analytic graph, just like Conductor does. So these are effectively the same thing. This one is more community driven. This one is Netflix driven, but they're both open source, free to use if you'd like. Oh, Russell, thanks for saying that. And again, I tried to make it where I am calling these specific out because that is this week's stuff that's going on, and it's on. But again, like I said, I do also pick on the US when they're making stupid laws, which they do just as stupid, or try to do just as stupid laws. So it's not me directly picking on them, although I am picking on them in this instance. And if you find any country where they're forcing something like this, like less secure, put it on my Discord. I'm gonna start keeping a Hall of Fame, and I'm keeping a document with all of these for my Hall of Fame. So every once in a while, we'll go over the Hall of Fame of worst cybersecurity laws ever tried to be enacted, and hopefully we keep it to tried and not actually enacted. Because if these two got through, that would be no bueno, no bueno. All right, so Rumil, I'm still waiting on silkworms. You better prove that they chew on it and that they don't spit it out of their butt. If you're gonna prove me wrong, because I still think that's how silkworms do it. In my mind, that's how they do it, because they're like a spider, right? I don't. That's not like a spider at all. All right, I'm gonna shut up on that subject. Guys, thank you for joining me. I hope that you had a good week. Hopefully next week it's going to be a little bit shorter. I have a business trip that I'm going on, so I'm going to be super busy over the week. So next week is going to be a very condensed, hopefully less than half an hour. Thank you so much for your time that you stayed here and hung out. I hope that this helped you in some way. If it didn't, let me know how it could be more helpful. Yep. That's it for me today. Hope you guys have as good of a week as you can. Hope you have a fantastic week. And I will see you guys next week.